Live. Hey everyone, we're back. It's Monday. We're a little late than usual, but today's been an interesting day because we were supposed to actually have Casey McLean on this podcast, but didn't work out. And so therefore we decided that, you know what, we made a commitment to show up every Monday. And so James and I are going to do this podcast, and we've actually talked about this, James. We were going to do this, and we talked about changing the setup so that it is more of a, just that you guys get to see behind the scenes too. Because I think sometimes on social media, we project something that's perfect, looks great, but you really don't. But this is more about a conversation, not only between the two of us, but also with you guys on the other side. And so now you get to really experience behind the scenes, because James is the one who actually has been
setting up the cameras, switching them, all this stuff. Maybe we'll point the camera at the end of the podcast, and you can see everything that's going on over here. You know?
Yeah, and you know, and I was thinking about this. We like when you look at an iPhone, we look at it, you know, superficially in some sense as a user.
Right. You don't actually think, well, what actually goes all into it, right?
No, you don't see the complexity behind the scenes to make something look so clean and so great. So first of all, you're amazing at what you do, your craft, and just always blown away by the work that you do.
Yeah. Glory to God, man.
Yeah. But you weren't always a camera guy.
No,
you weren't.
I was not. No,
you weren't. So how did you get into this world? Because it's really fascinating.
Well, how did I get into camera world? So, you know, I used to live a really bad lifestyle. You know, I was selling drugs, just the worst. You know what I mean? Everything that comes with that lifestyle is what I was taking part in, right? And there was a time when I found God. Living that lifestyle, I crashed a car. There was a bunch of people in the car. Nobody ended up getting hurt. Long story short, like there was something, I never believed in God before. And then after that accident, and how many things happened that were coincidental, you know what I mean? Like that, I ended up getting home that night and just saying, wow, I was not alone. And that's basically where it all started. And then I acknowledged God. I said God was with me, and it was undeniable at that point. Like no church, no nothing, no person. I had people trying to convince me that God was real before that, and I said, you know what? Like I'll find out when I'm dead. Like I had no care in the world. And then from that point, after finding God, well, like nothing was the same. I couldn't do the same things I did before. Even when I tried, they just weren't successful anymore. You know. So a month after that car accident, I ended up getting arrested, and I was facing 5 to 6 years in jail now from a separate thing, not the car accident. And I ended up back in my parents' house. And it's funny because, you know, God says he'll return the children to their father, right? And so my parents were divorced since I was a little kid, since I was 3 or 4 years old. And they got remarried like 15, 16 years later, like 1 or 2 years right before I started believing in God. And then he brings me back to my parents' home because I'm on bail there, and they're my assurities, right? So, you know, I'm staying at my parents' house, and it brought a lot of stuff up, like a lot of just trauma and hurt that we all went through. Even like my dad went through stuff, my mom went through stuff. Like our life was hell, really. You know, none of us were living for God. Just the family being broken apart in the first place, not having a father figure. So like the rappers became my father figure, and so, you know, we started rebuilding and stuff like that. But while I'm working, or while I'm at my parents' house, my mom said, you're going to be working while you're here on bail. Like you're not staying in my house and not working. So I started working for like some kitchen stuff. So I was like, you know, it's like the chef and staff for hire is what it's called. And they would bounce me around to different places where whoever was going on vacation, they needed somebody to come help, or they needed an extra person for an event. So that's what I was doing for, I don't remember exactly, but maybe about a year. But as you know, I write hip hop music, right? And so, I always was doing that since I was 12 years old, and I didn't stop once I found God. But it came to a point where I wanted a music video, and I already had a music video done before that. And so the second music video that I wanted to work on, I was looking for somebody to film it, and it didn't end up happening. So like just things were just falling through, and I was getting impatient. my friend actually ended up coming over. The guy that actually makes me beats, shout out to Tiggs. He came over and brought a camera. He's like, yo, I got this camera. You want to just try to do something with it? And so I ended up filming my own music video. And I was happier with that music video than the one that I paid for previously. And so I said, okay. And, you know, my daughter was just born at this time. And I know that there's some good money to be made in cinematography. And so I said, you know what? Like, I'm happy with this work. I'm going to trust what God gave me this. And he showed me this. And so I just completely trusted God that this is what he was giving me, was the camera work that I'm doing. And so I sat around for like 7 or 8 months, not doing anything. It's, you know, waiting, you know, you just wait and you don't actually do, you know? And then it came to a point where, you know, I went and I was helping out Jamal, my friend Jamal, who was having an event called Rhapsody that I performed before. And then so I started to film it for him. And then I did, one of the guys I felt like should won. And so I did a free video for him. I said, bro, like, you should have won this. I'll do the music video for you. His name was King Crook, actually, just some young kid. And so I did the free music video for him, and then people seen that, and then they started messaging me, and then, you know, I started with $50, and then I started $100. But I just started to do, you know what I mean? I just picked up the camera and I started to do it. Doesn't matter what the cost was, and I wasn't worried about making mistakes, because I know that you're gonna make mistakes. That's how you learn, right? And so after making those mistakes and just continuing to grow, and I became really well known in the music industry area, whatever you want to call it, in Ottawa. So people knew me as the cinematographer for music videos. And so from that point, I just continued to do it. And it was cool because the mother of my children at the time had an inheritance from her parents, from her mom passing away, sorry. Mm-hmm. And so it almost gave me this, like, this blanket to actually delve into my craft. And, you know, because you can't support your family at $50 videos or $200 videos. It's just not happening, right? So it was just really divine how God had structured everything so perfectly for me to be able to put in the work, to get the camera, to study, to make the mistakes, to get to the point where, you know, I start to realize the value that I have to offer, and the value that I'm providing for other people's companies, and all this stuff, right? And yeah, so I just wasn't afraid to make mistakes, and that's how I got where I'm at, you know?
It's amazing, because there's so many people that complicate that process,
right?
But you just kind of dove head first into this arena,
yeah,
and it's opened tons of doors. But you said something really fascinating that I want to kind of focus on, is this idea of, you know, just serving people with your camera,
right?
Because you didn't necessarily go out there trying to get paid first,
right? Yeah, that's true, actually. So it was more of a ministry than anything, in my opinion. So I guess that's probably why I wasn't too focused on, I said, you know, when the time comes, I'll charge whenever I feel like that. Whenever God shows me that it's time to charge more, then I'm going to charge more. But really it was a big part of it was ministry, man. Like, you know, because I came from a lifestyle that was a very dark lifestyle, right? It was just darkness all around. All my friends would just encourage the behavior that I was doing. It was like, it was a vicious circle, right? Because you're doing something bad, and then your friends think you're cool because of that, right? And so, you know, coming from that lifestyle and like really not having any conscience towards it whatsoever. Like, I didn't feel like I was doing wrong, because it's like I was never taught better. And so, well, what I was taught was that was cool, right? Because, you know, the mainstream rap and all that stuff. So I was actually living how these guys rap, right? So that's what I was actually living out. And so when it came time, when I'm going into these places, you know, filming these music videos for these guys that are either, some of them were living that lifestyle, but it was like 5%, right? Maybe 10%. But for the most part, a lot of people have the idea that they think that it's cool or whatever, but they're not actually fully committed, right? You can see that they still have a heart, that they're not completely shut off. And it really brought me somewhere that nobody really goes when they have the light at that point, right? Because you don't really have a reason for it. Like, you know, you don't want to be around that kind of stuff when you're trying to live right.
Yeah.
And so filming these music videos, it gave a purpose, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't agree with the music, and everybody that I film for knows I don't agree with the music. But that almost made them see that I wasn't judging them, right? So I'm not judging you for your music. I'm still going to film the music video. You know, there's certain things that I don't put on the music video just because of my conscience. I have to sleep at night, but I'm not going to judge you for the lyrics that you're writing. And so I think that they really noticed that. And, you know, a lot of people were able to be open with me and honest with me about some of the hardest people in the city that people would think are the most gangster people were willing to open up to me and just be real life with me, because I think that, you know, when they were with me, they knew that stuff wasn't cool to me. Right. And so you don't have to be somebody around me. You could be yourself around me. And, so it's really interesting to see how people react to certain things, you know, because again, like how I was, when I was around the people that I was around, they all thought it was cool what I was doing. Now, if somebody like me, and the thing is, the people that I was talking to, like while I was filming the music videos, they knew I came from that lifestyle. Like they knew, like you can still Google my name. You know, what's funny is as time goes by, you Google my name now and like good things start to show up, right? So now it's like, you know, you see my LinkedIn profile, you see my website that I used to have up, just little more like things that involve cinematography. It's really interesting. Because before, like you would just see like news article after news article about, you know, this guy who committed a home invasion and these people jumping out the second story window and all this crazy stuff, right? So people could see that, you know, I was genuine. Like I actually came from that lifestyle. So that's another thing too, right? I actually came from it and I don't think it's cool, but it's like we meshed on a certain level. Yeah. Cause I understood and I didn't judge because I understood. Right. And so it really was a beautiful thing to be able to be in that place and do for other people what should have been done for me, you know?
Wow, that's a really powerful statement. Do for other people that should have been done for me, because so many people stop at the, hey, what the heck, what about me? And then they're just stuck in that kind of blame game, angry. But you somehow, and that had to come from a deep revelation of this forgiveness that you received. Not only from, you know, obviously reconnecting back with God, but also your family. Like your parents taking you in. That must have been a pretty humbling process for you.
So being at my parents' house. Well, the thing is, with being at my parents' house, I had a lot of resentment, and it took a long time for me to understand how to forgive them. Or, you know, when the Bible says to honor your parents, right? And there's supposedly, I can't recall the scripture, but there's a promise to that. Like God promises that your life will be good when you honor your parents. And I really started to see, like, I'm getting goosebumps right now, even just saying it. Like I see the fruits of that, right? As I honor my parents, like there's certain doors that opened up, but God brought us together like that to really start the healing process. But it was hell, man. Like there's still something broken in my parents' house that like is unfixable, that I busted, you know, just, and like, I'll be honest, like there was times where, like, I had a lot of bad stuff happen to me as a kid. And so there was times where like I spit on my mom arguing with them, and I'm physically getting physical with my dad while we're all in the same house. And it was tough, man. But you know, like, today how things are it's amazing how things are with them now, and how close I am with them, and how much love we have all for each other. And so I mean, the thing is, it's just a matter of holding on and know, like, when you know God, then you can find peace even when you're going crazy, when everything is a mess. There's a peace knowing, you know. And it's funny because this, like, I feel like there's a certain scripture, I don't know if people have the same experience, where there's like script, like you feel like the scripture was meant for you, and God keeps showing you the scripture like all the time. And then people buy me this thing, buy me some Christian thing, and it's the scripture, you know what I mean? And it's the one that says, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. And that's the one that is like always pops up all around me the whole time. And so knowing that scripture, right, I know he knows the plans he has for me, and it's good things. And then there's the other one, you know, like all things work together for good for those that love the Lord. And because of that time where I connected with God and he showed me himself, right? And people say, you know, I found God, but I really say he just made it undeniable for me to recognize him, right? And so, and I love God for what he did for me, because he was willing to save me from that whole car accident, all that stuff that happened that night. Like, there's a lot of details in that I won't get into. But, you know, knowing that he did that for me, it created a relationship between me and him at that point. Even when I didn't know him, you know what I mean? Like, sorry, I shouldn't say, well, yeah, I didn't know him. Like, you know, the more you are with somebody, the more you get to know them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I started to know God. I had the connection with him at this point, but I didn't know his ways. So I'm still like, you know, I still had Coke in my bag. I still had this stuff, you know what I mean? Like like, even while I'm praying to God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so the thing is, he was taking me through it because I loved him, right?
Yeah.
And so all things work together for good. So, you know, knowing like that I had that stuff, like I was a drug dealer and all this stuff, again, that works out for good because I connected with the people in my city because of that, right?
Yeah.
And they listen. That's the craziest thing, because God gave me wisdom, right? He takes the foolish things and makes it wise, right? And if anyone was foolish, it was me. And so then, you know, I'm around these people and I know, and I have wisdom, and I'm able to speak into their lives because I'm going through it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm able to speak into their lives and say, you know what, there's better ways than this. And I'm a living example. Like, you guys are hiring me for video work while I came from just doing what you're doing. And then, you know, God shows me things like there's never, like, what's the end game of selling drugs?
Yeah.
Right. And people don't realize that because their egos are puffed up or they feel good about what they're doing. Some people actually feel bad about it and they don't want to do it. And they just have these goals like, oh, once I get this much money, I'll stop doing it. Right. But it doesn't work like that. Because you know, one analogy that I always make is if you sorry, somebody's calling on the Facebook. Sorry, Jolene, we'll call you after, Jolene. We're in the middle of a live stream. So if where was I? If you ever were to look at like a rich businessman, the last investment in a business he's going to make is a drug dealer. Yeah, it's the last one, right? And you know, the problem is it's the ego that's involved with the drug dealing that I think keeps them trapped more than the success of it. Because I've met a lot of people and for the most part, they're not successful selling drugs. They might have money at the time, and even if they have a couple bucks, it's not sustainable because people are going to snitch on you. People are going to rob you. You're going to get messed up by these people. Even if nobody snitches on you, the cops could just catch you. You know, you always, at least myself, I always had, they call it work. I always have work in the car. You know what I mean? So it was like, it's just a matter of time before it's game over. Like, you're never going to have, I forget, like if there's like an older person, how much money do they need to retire? Do you know that number? Like, there's like a certain amount of money that you actually need to be comfortable retiring. Yeah, isn't it? It's like $1 million or 2 million.
This is 1.7 million, I think.
Right. And so if you want to retire at like 67 years old, you better have 1.7 million in the bank, right? Yeah. And how realistic is that you're going to be selling drugs till you're 60 years old without getting caught and being able to save about 2 million? It's impossible, right? Yeah. And so, you know, God's showing me this wisdom that it's not even logical. It's so detrimental to your success in the long run. Like, even if you feel temporary success right now because you can buy some gold chains, well, even that, you should be saving your money if you really think about it in the long run, because you need 2 mil to retire, unless you want to sell drugs your whole life, you know? Yeah. And it's just not going to work. So yeah, it's really, really cool how God works. You know, all things work together for good for those that love the Lord. And, you know, he knows the plans that he has for you. And that's plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and help you to endure everything, you know?
That's such a powerful, like the illustration that you've used, even that passage in, I think it's Jeremiah 29. Actually.
I think it is.
It is actually. I'm just saying I think because it sounds better if I say I think. But because I've studied that out pretty intensely, and that's one that we connected on.
Yeah, like plant your stuff like in the jungle.
Because that's powerful. Let's hit that, because I think you had this wisdom inside of you that most people don't get, and often just end up, you know, struggling and living resentment. But
well, that's why I always give the glory to God, right? Because where did it come from? I wasn't taught from anybody this stuff. Nobody. Like my parents. And it's not to blame them, because they were in darkness too, right? Yeah. And so, like, you can't have resentment for people that are in darkness. They did the best they could. Yeah. Whereas we do things, it's like, you know, you ever turn Christian or you found God, or even if you didn't, you say, oh, I'm never going to do that again. And then you do it again, right? Are you going to hold against other people when they would have loved you if they could have, or if they knew better? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so yes, it's not to hold anything against them, but when you're in darkness, you don't know better. So that's what, again, sorry to cut you, but that's why I give all the glory to God, because of the wisdom that I have only came from him. Right.
And that's supernatural. Yeah. And that's, I think, where most people feel a sense of hopelessness. So they're trapped in that lifestyle,
Right.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It could be drugs. It could be just even in just bitterness and anger towards, you know, their family or someone else.
Yeah.
They're just trapped in that state.
Right. Right.
But often they feel that the help needs to come from an external source outside of themselves.
Right.
But what you discovered, which
Right.
is powerful, is
Yeah.
that it actually came from the inside. It was in there. It
Exactly.
was resident. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you were born with wisdom.
Yeah.
You have wisdom in you.
Kingdom of heaven is within.
Yeah,
Right,
but it's to be awakened to it. And I
Right.
think for most, they're unaware of it because the skill set that it took to sell drugs.
right.
Like I was thinking about that. I mean, in order to become a very successful drug dealer,
Yeah.
you have to be an astute businessman.
Right. To some
A
extent,
businesswoman. You got to.
You got to understand
You
something.
know, you gotta. You can't consume your product.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a huge one.
Yeah.
And a really good drug dealer does not consume his product
Right,
or her
right.
product. They get it out.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you got to be able to take care of so many variables that are involved. And it's a horrible way because you just described it. You're
Yeah.
dealing with the cops, you're dealing with
Yeah.
others trying to maybe, you know, snitch on
yeah.
you or rob you.
Right.
The environment that you're in is not really conducive.
Right. Yeah.
To be on the side of the street and hustling, you know, all night.
Yeah, well, it's everybody around you that's in the same boat,
It's
right?
same
So,
boat.
yeah.
Even to make it in that environment, to be successful, says something. It's a testament to your intrinsic, just acumen, I guess, as a business person. You'd see that.
Well, it's funny because, you know, like I used to work for the automotive company,
Yeah.
right? And the owner of the automotive company came from a similar lifestyle, you know, but he was saying that, so he, like his first investor that he got into his company is some like really, what's the word I'm looking for? High profile lawyer.
Yeah.
Like big time high profile lawyer. And even this guy's saying, yeah, man, the drug dealers, they got it from, you're selling drugs when you're 12 years old. Oh, there's something inside of you,
Yes.
like entrepreneurial mind state, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that's it. It's just got to change the product. You got to
Exactly,
just change it so that you can sell something that actually helps people instead
Right.
of destroys people's lives. And I think that's the problem with drugs or drug dealing, is that it's usury. At the end of the
Right.
day,
Yeah.
you intentionally are selling a product to people that is going to cause...
It's selfish, really.
It's
at the end of the
selfish,
day.
yeah.
Yeah, because you're only caring about yourself, right? Like lining your pockets at the expense of other people's health.
Yeah.
But then you justify it with excuses like, if they don't buy it from me, they'll buy it from somebody else. And that's true. So that's where it comes, like, you can't be complacent. Like, you're on one side or the other. There's no middle ground, right? Because if you stop selling drugs, then they're going to buy from somebody else. But that's why, you know, I believe God called me into that, right? Because again, like when you have the light, there's something about that light, and you don't put a cover over the light, right? Like light is
Let it
meant
shine.
to, yeah, it's meant to shine in dark places, right? And so I always thought that, I'm like, what if there was somebody that was like how I am now? What if that person came around me back then? I wonder what would have happened. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because I used to, you know, like to quote Kanye, like, you can't tell me nothing, right? And that was like nobody. I didn't respect anybody, like especially my parents, because, you know, I blamed them for a lot of the stuff that I went through. And there was nobody that I felt like. I was so egotistical, and that's what happens when you're in that lifestyle. At least if you're trying to be the drug dealer or the leader in a sense or whatever, right? You are very egotistical, and so it's like nobody's like matched to me. So I'm not listening to you because you're not on the same level as me. I feel smarter or tougher or cooler or whatever the case may be. So I'm not listening to anybody. But what if there was somebody who I knew actually lived that lifestyle, really was in it, you know what I mean? Like with the stripes to prove it, that came around and didn't judge me for how I was living, but shone a light on what I was doing, right? And said, and was able to speak my language, and not just speak the language, but to like communicate it in a way that hits you, right? Like again, like that example that I just gave about the businessman that would never invest in something like that, and how you need 2 million cash saved up to retire when you're older, unless you're selling drugs your whole life. It's like, oh, if I would have thought about that back then, maybe I would have started looking into some other options or whatever the case may be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the challenge. I know most people are always looking for a hack and a shortcut to life.
Right.
And I think both of us have learned is that there's no real shortcuts, because those shortcuts actually end up being the long way and incredibly painful.
Yeah, you just turn it around.
Yeah, and you never even really reach, the stated goal, whatever it is the promise is, because it's a lie.
Yeah.
Because that lifestyle is just a pure, straight up lie.
Yeah.
And often, though, it's not just, and I was thinking about people even listening to this, they may not go, okay, well, I've never done drugs and whatever.
Right.
But it's, whatever the vocation that you're in, often we sometimes get into it for the wrong reasons. The motivation is wrong.
Yeah.
And so if you're not aligned as an individual, then you get into this place where you're using, because now it's all about the filthy lucre. It's always about the money, and and then you start to use people, which is a horrible way to make a living. And ultimately, we're not meant to use.
Yeah, well, and it reflects your character too, right? So, like, even somebody that goes to work that hates their job, right? Even something like that, and when they are not actually working to the full potential, you're stealing somebody's money, right? Because they're hiring you, and they're expecting a certain output from you. And if you're telling yourself, "Oh, I'm just gonna collect my paycheck and then start doing something else," or whatever the case may be, like, that's dishonest, and that will reflect in say you're working somewhere and you're just there for the paycheck to sustain you while you want to start your own business, right? Because that's actually a reflection. That's actually like a mirror of a lot of drug dealers. Even people that I personally know, they have a business and then they have the drug dealing, and they want to make X amount of dollars drug dealing before they go all into their business, right? And it doesn't work like that, because you're always like, again, like, that character is going to follow into your other business. And people don't want a drug dealer in a business. It's not a good lifestyle, because again, like, the root of drug dealing is like other people's suffering that you're gaining off of, right? And so it's the same thing if you were to, have another job and you are trying to work on your other business, but you're not going full on the job that you're being paid for right now. Like, you are a dishonest person. And so that's going to reflect, like, that's just your character. And so unless you start to change your character within that job, you're not going to operate the proper way in your own business, right? So there's no shortcuts. Just do what you got to do, be honest, work hard, and push through everything, and don't stop, even when the S hits the fan, you know what I mean? Like, you just gotta, again, you trust God. All things work together for good for those that love the Lord, right? And it's just being willing to go through the hell to know that there's an end of it eventually, right?
There's always an end. And I was just talking to, I don't know who I was talking to. I talk to so many people on a regular basis, but I know the subject matter.
Well, that's why we got the podcast.
Yeah, that's why we got the podcast. But it was a discussion in relationship to being outcome driven. So if in this conversation I have an agenda, I'm trying to move you from point A to point B, then really I'm not trying to connect, or I'm connecting for other, reasons that are more selfish than they are about you as a person. So I'm not engaged in the process. And I think life is a lot like that, we often get engaged, we get jobs, we, start businesses because we're very much outcome driven.
Okay.
But it's got to be about the love of the thing that you're doing, whether it's you're an artist, whether you're in business. If you truly love, and also you make that process about character development and growth. So in the end, and I wrote a post about this, you can succeed and still fail. Well, nobody
succeeds without failing.
Exactly.
It's impossible.
But there's some people, they get to the top of the mountain. We look at them and we're like, wow, look at them, man. Like, I wish I was them, because they've got the money, the cars, and so forth, so on. But then when you really look at how they got there, they're living, they're, whatever mountain that they've climbed, they're not really, it's not the fruit of their labor where they're truly enjoying it. Because, if you go to a bank and you rob a bank for whatever amount of money, you're not really going to enjoy that money.
Well, it's the same. It's like what Jolene, that reminds me of what Jolene was saying. Like you don't have happy money. And so that's why, like, you rob the bank. Well, guess what? Guess where that money's going? It's going to bad places.
Exactly.
And again, that's lifestyle too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you're a bank robber. You're not an honest person in
No.
the first place, you know? And it's like people that make that paycheck, and they, first of all, they might have not worked hard for it. They didn't work honest for it. They hate their job. Well, you're going to hate that paycheck the same way that you hate your job, right? And so
You're not going to keep that money
Yeah.
because you as quickly as it comes, it leaves your hands.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, but yeah, so yeah, one of the places that I'm in right now personally is in this place of, I care about, the outcome, of course.
Right.
You want to have impact. You want to have all those things. I think performance goals and all those things are important.
Yeah.
But who you are in the midst of wherever you might be, whether it's in the wilderness season of your life, in the desert, and it's really difficult, it's really challenging. I know a lot of people right now with COVID, they might be feeling that way.
Yeah. I bet,
But that's the place where you're developing your character. It's funny, biblically, you see this often where anybody is being prepared for something very, big.
Yeah.
They always are sent into a season of wilderness where they're isolated. Like
Jonah, Jesus,
all of them, they all
Moses,
have they have these seasons of character.
everyone, even like, so, like Jonah, like he went to the boat, he was in the whale, he was all that stuff. Moses, after he killed the
Egyptian
guard,
dude,
right? He I don't remember how long it was.
40 years.
Was it 40? No, because that was the when they were, like, he was already on the move though. I'm saying before that, he became the leader, he went to
it's the wilderness because he killed
with that family or whatever. Or something, right?
He marries the Pharaoh and all those.
Yeah. So how long was he there?
Was there 40
was that 40 years?
Yes.
And then another 40 years?
Well, he didn't
with
make
the Israelites.
He didn't make
that.
40. He probably made like 20 or something like that.
Right, and that because he died, and then was it the guy with the J, name with the J?
Not Jonah.
No, but like Joshua came and he like took over Moses' thing, right?
Yeah.
But before that ever happened, like, it was wilderness, and Jesus, 40 days in the desert, and it's super interesting that you buckle up, basically.
But that's most of life, and I think we live in a. And I was listening to somebody this morning. Actually, it was a podcast, and they were talking about it's only in the last 100 and some years that we've figured out this concept called leisure.
Okay.
Because in the old days, it didn't matter if you were rich or poor.
Yeah.
Your lot in life was work.
Right.
People worked. The concept of leisure and free time. That did not exist.
You know what's so funny? And I'll touch on that because I'm trying to even understand that still to this day. Because when you're drug dealing, you're not working. Like, you're not doing nothing. You know what I mean? Like, you drive around or you have people come meet you. There's nothing physical about it. It's not work. It's not hard work. You know what I mean? Like, I could wake up, sell something, go back to sleep, right? And so even today, like, I'm still trying to develop and understand that, like, man, people that are successful work every day and they grind, and like, if they feel like there's nothing to do, they find something to do to add on to their business or whatever the case may be, right? And it's not always about this free time. And because there's even a scripture that says, observe the ant, right? The ant is a hard worker. It doesn't stop. They are always moving. They're always going to collect food for the winter, whatever the case may be. The ant is a hard worker, and it tells us to observe the ant. So we should be active every day, doing something, working every day. And I'm still trying to grasp that, right?
Well, I think we all are, because society tells us that the end, the goal is, a retirement in Florida.
Right.
I guess for Canadians, I don't know if Americans or someone else. But the point is that that's the angle. So everybody's working to retire. And that concept, the term retirement, actually makes no sense. It's like, most people who actually end up retiring where they have this, they have a vocation, like let's say they're a police officer or fireman, or they've done, like they do work that's incredibly valuable. I mean, all work is valuable. Sorry if anybody's listening to this. All work is valuable. But the point is that they've had purpose for most of their life.
Right.
And then when they stop, most of them don't even make it 10 years.
Wow. Like they croak after
They
that.
croak, they die because, and this is the thing that I've been really thinking about, is that we as humans by nature are creators. We're meant to create.
Right.
And in our culture right now, it's all about passively consuming. So sitting down in front of Netflix, binge watching. Have you experienced this? I've done this where you can watch 10 episodes of something, binge watch it, and still not feel satisfied. I actually feel more empty at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because it becomes this.
Well, you feel like you just wasted all your time too, right?
Well, but what's happening though is, and it's that you're not creating, you're just passively consuming.
Right.
And we're not meant for that.
Yeah.
And so most of mental health issues can be attributed to individuals having no purpose in life. Because depression, I know that there's, hereditary, there's a whole sorts of things that people deal with. And I'm saying, don't
one size fits all.
I'm not speaking from the extremes.
Right.
I love generalization because that's more interesting. Otherwise, it's not a fun conversation to some extent. But the point is that most of the time, I can make myself feel incredibly depressed if I wake up and I don't have anything to build, pursue.
Right.
You have to have, a purpose to life.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting enough, and it's mental health issues, especially things that we're dealing with in our culture these days, especially with COVID right now. There's a huge, spike in it.
Yeah, and there's the overdosing gone way up and all this stuff, domestic abuse, and people aren't at peace. Yeah.
People aren't happy because they've been, part of it is, some people will say, well, most people have just been, running away from their problems at work. But it's not that. I think part of it is also that we're not meant to be stationary permanently.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting because when I find myself, like even yesterday, right? So I have a couple of videos to edit, but Starbucks is closed and all the coffee shops are closed because it was Sunday. I'm like not at peace. And it's not good because, I'm trying to have like perfect peace all the time. But it was very strange because like when I don't have anything to edit or I don't have anything that I'm filming that day, I don't know what to do with myself. And I'm like just kind of like create, like, I'll spend time with my kids or whatever, but I still like, it's like an uneasy feeling almost, like, because you, again, like you said, we're supposed to be working all the time. We're supposed to be creating all the time. So when I'm able to get on my mind and I can, I'm either teaching my children something or we're going to the park, but it's short lived because then what about there's 16 hours that you're awake or whatever it is, and it's like, what do you do at that point? And I think when you have started to follow that path, when you're not high all the time. Like I'm not smoking weed. So I'm not like, I can't just smoke weed and zone out and watch something. And so when you're really trying to be successful and do something in life, when you don't have anything to do that day, you don't know what to do with yourself. And it's like, you kind of go a little crazy, Like, oh, I don't know what to do. You're sitting there and then you start consuming on your phone. But even at that point, you're not satisfied. There's this, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this is boring. There's nothing here. And then it's like you flip between Facebook and Instagram and then YouTube, but then you can't even get into a YouTube video that's long because because it's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're restless. Yeah.
And I think part of it is this, a book that I'd read after my burnout that was transformative was The Rest of God. Last name Buchanan. I can't remember his first name, but incredible writer, first of all, just the prose and the flow of it. But one of the things
it's not the book we're on right now.
No, that's not it. But he talks about there's two types of rest. And so there's the one that we in North America think it's rest, but it's not.
Right.
And we term it vacation. It's
okay.
So you know how in our culture, most people that work 9 to 5, they can't wait for the weekend.
Right.
Thank God it's Friday. We got all these songs.
Yeah.
Because people are waiting for, why are they waiting for the weekend?
Right.
So that they can, and this is the term that he uses, which is really fascinating, is the word vacation. And when you look at that word vacation, vacate. What people do is they vacate. So what we do is, you use the term perfectly. Weekend comes, people zone out. They watch, like I know Sunday, I remember growing up, my thing on Sunday was watch NFL football for like,
You like football?
Oh, I was obsessive into football.
I didn't know that.
Skinny guy like me, eh? But I was a huge Chicago Bears fan.
Are you talking soccer or football?
No, American football.
Okay.
No, Saturdays I would like totally zone out on actual real football, soccer.
Yeah.
So on Saturday I would watch this is the old days, when you didn't have much soccer. Soccer wasn't that big.
Okay.
So, but it was all on Saturday. Right. So I would wake up early in the morning and I would watch soccer until 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that was my day. Yeah. And then, Saturday evening you went out, whatever. Yeah. And then Sunday, sat down in front of the couch, watched all the football games.
Right.
I didn't just watch the football games. I had to need to watch the pregame, like, because they had to set me up. So this is how obsessive I was into it.
Right.
It's like I would watch even church. I'd be sitting at church and I'd be so mad because the preacher would be preaching too long. Because I'd be like, I need to get home 12 o'clock, because I need to watch the pregame for half hour.
Yeah.
And then watch. And then ESPN came along, which meant like the pregame show was like 2 hours. So you could literally end up wasting an entire Sunday. So what I would do is I would watch all day, and then they came up with, Sunday night football.
You're trapped.
You're trapped. So the point is this, is that you literally spent your weekends just vacating.
Right. Yeah.
And Buchanan talks about this is so important. And he says, listen, when you go on vacation, you vacate, you don't recreate.
Right.
The purpose of rest is to recreate. So you need to do activity that fuels you. So what are some of those things? Reading a book.
Right.
That's not a passive thing. You're engaging.
Right.
Or going out for a hike and really playing. And so you're not doing work in the context of like, you have to do something.
Whatever,
John Ruby has this. John and Vicky Ruby, my favorite human beings. Don't go around them because you'll be like, oh, I've got a problem. They've got the anointing. They'll be like, I'm an addict. No, I'm going to tell you everything. But they say something that's really powerful. For them, the day off is their Sabbath, is their Saturday.
Right.
And they don't have to. They don't have any have tos.
Okay.
So what they wake up every morning, they don't have to do anything. And I think that's what we're meant for.
Yeah.
That one day a week, we need that point to recreate, re-energize, so that we can come back into our work with a sense of like, purpose and context, and we even refresh and energize. But I think we often don't do that. We just say, that concept, I'm bored, did not exist 100 and some years ago. No one was bored 100. They didn't even know the concept.
Right.
But the reason we're bored is that we've been conditioned to work towards leisure.
Right.
And I don't think that's the end of men. That's not the purpose of men. Leisure is not the purpose. Retirement is not a purpose.
It's funny because, when you were talking about that, being able to be consumed by that football all the time, like, could you do that today?
I can't even watch 20 minutes of football anymore.
Right.
I can't.
So I wonder what that is, because it's the same for me. Like, I used to be able to play video games before, or I used to be able, I don't even know like what I used to watch. I never really watched much of anything. But like, I remember one time I watched the whole seasons of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
But I was on like, I think that was when I was on bail.
Yeah.
And so, I'm on certain conditions and I can't do certain things. But today I can't play video games. Like, even though like in my mind, I like, I developed this scenario, how fun it would be. Because I remember the feeling I used to have before.
Yeah.
Right. When I would be able to get into the video game and, build the character or whatever the case may be. And I remember that feeling, and I'm like, and I feel like I could do that again. So I download the game and I start playing, and then it's like, again, like 20 minutes maybe, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, right?
You're ruined.
So it's weird how you like to be at this point. That's probably why we do a lot of work together, because we have a similar drive.
Yeah.
Whereas some people could be the same age as you still, or same age as me still, and they're still able to get sucked in and lost into that. So what do you think that is that like separates somebody like us that just can't even do it if we wanted to? Because I have the want to do it sometimes. Like, again, like when I said, when I have nothing to edit, nothing to film, I'm like, oh, why don't I go play a video game? But I can't even do that. So what's the separation between somebody that can't do it anymore and somebody that can still?
Wow, that's a really good question. Here's I'm going to answer it using golf to illustrate this.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of podcasts because I find podcasts are just
Right.
illuminating.
Yeah.
You learn a lot. And I was listening to this podcast recently, and they were talking about golf. And what they were doing was, this guy is like a PhD, and so he did his research paper on trying to see the correlation between the amount of golf a CEO plays versus the performance of his company.
Okay.
And what he discovered, this is really fascinating, is that the worse a company is doing, the more
golf he's going to play.
The more golf the CEO plays.
Wow.
And so they can actually, and what they learned is that golf is actually one of the most addictive sports, anything out there.
Wow.
And I know that because I've been addicted to golf before.
Oh yeah, you play golf too?
And, yeah, golfers buy, like, they're obsessive. They'll buy everything, anything, because they're chasing the same thing every drug, dude. That sweet, beautiful hit that happens, not often.
Yeah.
So most golfers are, 3 million join golf every year and 3 million quit.
Oh, wow.
Because...
Oh, you mentioned this recently. I heard you say this recently, yeah.
Yeah, but golf is, what's his name there? A great
Tiger
writer.
Woods
I don't know.
a writer?
Mark Twain, he termed it a good walk ruined. And the reason being is because golf is incredibly frustrating, but it promises so much.
A good walk ruined. So he was talking about golf when he said that? Because
it is.
You're walking a lot, but it's like you're frustrated that your ball went the wrong way.
And you can never... You're chasing a high, that beautiful, sweet, crisp hit. And everybody out there, the golf pro and all these guys, they're promising you that if you buy this... But the point I'm trying to make is this, is that the reason why you get obsessed over NFL, gaming, golf, any of those things, it's because there is this dopamine hit that you get from it.
Right.
And it makes you feel great. And that's why every morning you wake up and you obsessively think of it, because you're chasing a feeling. So I think what's happened to guys like us is when you find a higher purpose, and then you find that in doing service and doing great work, that is also a high. So one of the things I do that's kind of to trick my mind is that I literally say this to myself, and I say this to clients often when I'm talking to them. I say, I would do this for free, because I would. Yeah. Because it gives me such great, like, I feel more alive, and I think you do too, doing the work that I'm doing, because if I'm watching football, I know too much now. It's like when I was, getting high and partying, like, man, I love being in the bars and the scene and all that stuff. But once I stopped doing drugs, I saw the reality of it all. I think that's what I know, is that now I can't necessarily just get lost in gaming, because in the end I realize the payoff. Yeah. It's not, I'm going to feel still like kind of like...
No, there's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
Right, yeah.
You kind of, there's no... It promises, and I think that's what so many people... So the reason why somebody binge watches Netflix, come on, think of it. Yeah. Why would somebody waste... 10, 12 hours of their time, of their life. If they knew they only had based on that graph that I did, I only have like 30 years left based on the average lifespan of a dude, 78 years. So if you knew you only had that many years left, why would you, it's not logical for you to spend your life in front of a TV or playing a game. But the reason being is because it promises something. And the promise is that at the end of this episode, you're going to find enjoyment, fulfillment. You're going to find happiness. But guess what happens? You get to the end of it, it's not enough. Right. So then so Netflix smart enough with that. You know what they do now?
Autoplay.
They autoplay the sucker, or YouTube, all these guys, because they know it's never enough.
And they want to keep you consuming. And so it's interesting because... when you're talking about getting a purpose, and then you feel how that feels, and it's almost like different potencies of different drugs per se, right? And so like Netflix being a drug, it's good if that's all you know, right? And then so once you have this better feeling, and it's like, and you've experienced what it's like to serve other people and to help other people, or to get a real paycheck from something that you actually love doing, like, so again, like, to give Jolene a shout out again, it's like that happy money. So I'm filming videos. I love filming videos. I enjoy it. I enjoy the editing process. I enjoy, because I'm serving other people through this, right? It's not like I'm not creating consumers through my video work. I'm actually a servant to these people, to whoever hires me. And so I'm helping people. I'm helping people's businesses. I'm enjoying filming. I'm enjoying all this stuff. And there's a high involved in that. And especially like I always say, it's funny because like one of the biggest things that the payoff is when I help a business and I see the success that my video provides their business, and that feels great. You know, getting a message from one of my clients who said, this video saved my whole summer.
Wow.
Right. And so hearing something like that, it's like, that feels good. I have purpose. I'm helping the world. And then again, to jump back to the Netflix, it's like, what's the point of this? You know what I mean? Like it's there's nothing that's going to result from here. Zero, right? And it's fake, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, and I'm not one of those guys who's going to sit there and go, okay, well, never watch Netflix and all that stuff.
Right.
I think, you know, the term abuse is the abnormal use of something.
Yeah.
So everything has everything has its purpose, and it's whether or not you're utilizing it to self-medicate or to as you said earlier, to zone out.
Yeah.
And most people, what they're doing is they're checking out of life because they can't, A, deal with it.
Right.
B, they don't think they have the capacity to deal with it.
Right.
Because they think like, oh, I'm just not capable. And
well, it's funny because most people are working a job that they don't want to do. And I think that's probably the root of it. That's the starting point of it. It's, you have develop this idea that, you know, everybody has to work, which is a good thing that you feel like that, but you have given up, right? And so once you've put in your work for a place that you don't want to work at in the first place, that's why you're waiting for the weekend, because the weekend, you know, getting high, getting drunk, watching Netflix, whatever it is so much better than your work.
That's it.
So it's that level of potency again. So here's work. Well, here's drinking, and here's Netflix. That's a lot better than work. So you don't have anything to reach for at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's now, if you loved your work, Netflix is lower than your work at this point. Drinking is lower than your work at this point, especially when drinking will affect the higher work, right? And now it becomes a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it's detrimental to your dopamine releases, to your high, to your enjoyment, your fulfillment in life. Those things become detrimental in life. So like wasting my life on Netflix, well, I could have been studying more about sales. I could have been studying more about video. I could have just picked up my camera, went and filmed my kids, and had more fulfillment doing that than watching Netflix at that point, right?
There you go. And it's life is about, at the end of the day, it's about the meaning we give things.
Yeah.
And so if I look at Netflix and I give it this meaning that, oh, you know what? Netflix is going to make me happy. Netflix is going to give me fulfillment.
Right.
Netflix is going to solve my problems.
Right. Yeah.
Then Netflix becomes godlike. And so for most people, they even say this, it's like, well, what's an addiction? When something becomes habitual, when you're not in control, and it's also you're self-destructive.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing is actually destroying you,
right,
and you can't stop yourself. It's compulsion.
Right. Okay.
To enter to that level, to get to that place, you two have done it for a long time. Like addiction, like often people always say, you know what, like you take a hit of something and that's the end of it. No,
right.
You can take a hit of something, and I know a lot of people have done that, where they've taken a hit of something and decided, oh, it's not for me. They don't do it again because the meaning they gave it was like whatever. For me, I remember the first time I took a hit of ecstasy,
right,
the meaning I gave to it was, this is God in a pill. I found everything that I could not find spiritually, and so therefore the value that I'd given to it. So at that point, am I willing to do whatever is necessary to serve this tiny little pill? Right. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
And so why would somebody, pray to a tree? You think about that. Like I thought about that recently. I'm like, why would somebody pray to a tree? If logically they can see themselves going, you know what?
But do people pray to trees? Is that why you're...
Well, yeah, people pray to trees. They cut them down and turn them into, like in the Bible, for example, what did they do? They were worshiping a cow, a bronze cow.
Right, I got you. Yeah.
We do crazy things that are utterly illogical.
Right.
And somebody would look at you and say, that's not logical. Well, it's not.
Right.
Addiction, there's nothing logical about addiction because it's the meaning we give to things. So part of what I've come to is I've now understood that Netflix, at the end, like a great counselor once said this to me that really helped me. And she said, Joe, play the record to the end.
The song, right?
The song.
Yeah.
Like, play it to the end in your head. What she's saying is, yeah, in this moment, you're really excited and you can't wait. But what happens after the song is finished?
Right. And you're saying just like a task, she's do it like, for example, right? Like anything could be the song.
Whatever it could be. So it's like, I'm going to go to the bar.
Yeah.
Well, play it.
Yeah.
So this is what I was doing. Was like, okay, so I'm going to go to the bar and get drunk.
Right.
And at the end of it, what's going to happen? I'm going to be like all alone, feeling depressed.
Yeah.
I'm going to be hungover.
Yeah.
Work's going to suck. Once you've done that, I'm like,
yeah.
But we don't do enough of that because everything that we do becomes habitual. We're not even thinking about that.
Right.
And so for most people, they wake up every morning. Their intention is not to sit in front of a TV for X amount of hours.
Right.
But it's something that they've practiced. And I always say to people, anything that you practice long enough becomes automatic.
Right. I forget like how long it is to develop a habit. It's pretty quick, I think, but it takes like 3 weeks to get out of it, right? Literally not doing it for 3 weeks. So people end up, getting hooked on stuff very easily. And that's why, like, I probably won't even smoke weed again. Like, I won't even want to touch it because it's so easy for me to just start smoking all the time again, right? There's no like in between, Mark.
No.
And again, it took a bit to get out of it and to not have the temptations and to play it through to the end, like you're saying. And it's like, all right, there's good reason not to even bother with it. And you actually lose the appetite for it when you play it through the whole way and you actually see the end results because you become conscious, you become aware. And when you're trying to build and, you want to provide a way for your family and you want to help other people, those things are just detrimental to it. And it's not as good of a feeling as it is, buying something new for my kid's room, decorating the room a little bit more, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like that is so much more rewarding than smoking weed. Always being able to buy my kids like fresh pairs of shoes. It's like, okay, so I can get like a whole wardrobe for my kids for the price that I'll pay an ounce for weed for. And it's like, what's more valuable at this point? And then, people that have enough money, they say, well, they can get both. Well, your goals aren't big enough then. Right?
There
Because, you could be helping other people at this point. And that reward is like, because it's ingrained in you to help your family, right?
Yeah.
But then when you help somebody else's family, it's like the payoff for that in just the feeling inside alone is worth so much more than, the bag of dope that you could have got, right?
Straight up.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I think what you're getting into, which is really powerful, is that I think we find our purpose in the service of others. And so part of it is often in our culture, we're actually like, we think of self, like in our culture, we talk a lot about self-love.
Yeah.
But most of it is not self-love, it's narcissism.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
Because when you really understand your worth and your value, then it doesn't no longer become about you.
Right.
You start to look at what you have in the service of others. It's like when you came to that revelation and self-worth, despite all the abuse and all the crap that you went through,
right,
you immediately had this revelation and insight that your life is not for you and begin to serve people with your camera.
Right. Yeah.
And in the process, as you serve more people, you're also getting your needs met.
Right. Yeah. And so what's interesting about that is, I keep saying what's interesting about that.
It is interesting.
You just had to catch your own habits. You're aware, right? The observer. We're all about self-sustainability, right? And take care of yourself so you can take care of other people and all this stuff. It's always about yourself and making sure that you're happy. But when you know God and you know who God is for you, you don't worry about yourself because everything comes to you. And then you start to see the results of what it's like to not worry about yourself, but worry about other people. If I'm helping me, that's one person. If I help 10 people, say 50% of those people are washes and they don't care about me, even though I'm helping them. Well, the other 5 people, now I have 5 people willing to help me. So instead of just helping me, one person, I help 10 other people, and then 5 of those people want to help me. Well, now I have 5 people to help James if I ever need the help. You know what I mean? So it's almost counterintuitive to try to focus on yourself when if you focus on other people, you actually get more in return for that. But you can't do it with that motive.
No.
It's like Jesus said, there's that narrow path, right? Where it does end up helping you in the long run, or even in the short run sometimes, but you can't do it for that reason.
No,
right?
and I think this is where people make mistakes. We turn things into systems and, principles. They're great, but it's almost like people for example, and a lot of people talk about, what you focus on, you attract, and we create these models and systems for success. So people go, oh, okay, so if I do step 1, 2, and 3, then I'm going to get this outcome.
Right.
But you know what? That's not how life works. Life works this way. You do step 1 and then something crazy happens and then you go over here and then you veer off.
Right.
But along the way, what's happening is it's like, you're being tested and you're being formed, you're being prepared. And so even that passage that you talked about, Jeremiah 29. Well, the Israelites at that point, they're actually in slavery because they're going into Babylon. They're in captivity, and they're going to be there for 73 years. So there's no hope. It's like some guy, finding out that they're in jail for 73 years. That's it. Like they go to the court and the judge says, bang, 73 years. That's it. You're done for life. So they're like going to Babylon at that time. It's the most oppressive government you can think of. These are the people that were sacrificing babies. It's a really horrible place to be. So they're sent there. They're in captivity. And then they get this guy, Jeremiah, who's a prophet. He comes in and he gives them this word. And God has a plan for your future. He plans to prosper you. And so they're imagine receiving this word right now. You're feeling at the lowest point of your life. And you get this, but we always talk about that passage. But if you actually read on, it's not just 29:11. If you keep reading, you find out that he gives them this other really powerful direction. He says, pray for the shalom, which means the peace of Babylon. Okay? Oh. And then he says, increase but not decrease.
Have babies.
Plant vineyards. But it starts with pray for your enemies. Because he says, because in their blessing is also where your blessing is tied. Your blessing is tied to their blessing. So part of it is most people, when they've been oppressed and suppressed by a group of people or whatever it might be, they're like, oh man, vengeance, hate and all that.
And
anger. But the most subversive thing to do is this concept of love your enemies. When you begin to serve the very people that are not even giving you anything back, they're actually harming you. Now you're operating on a completely different plane because now you're not going to get anything good out of it. It's not like...
your motives are not...
Your motives. So part of it's motive.
Character development.
It's character development. So often what we do is we make it about motives. We turn it into a business system, a methodology to profit. And you go, well, if you serve... No, you got to mean it. And I think what I loved about you, when I first met you, I remember we were at Starbucks because John Ruby connected us. And we're sitting down, we're chatting. And the reason you and I connected was because you decided to serve Ashes to Rubies for free. And I saw you on that Thursday night and you were doing this camera work. And I'm like, man, you weren't just doing camera work. You were brilliant. And you were doing this for free. You weren't just coming in and going like, I'm helping this guy. I was like, man, this guy's a professional. The shots that you were taking.
It wasn't just like a friend of John's that has a camera or something.
No, it's exactly the level of professionalism and what you were delivering is exactly what you would deliver to someone that
to
was
a client.
To a client.
Exactly.
And when I saw that, I was just really like, man, I want to talk to him. And John, of course, spoke glowingly of you. And when we met and we talked, I saw like inherently in you was this ethic of service that you lived it out. It wasn't like so it's funny because I think of the amount of business that's come out of that service. It's incredible for you because it's like, you're
Well, meeting you, like one of the highest paying gigs I got so far was from you, and that was when I came from serving for free. I helped John out because John actually helped me out first on a video shoot that I was doing for this girl, and she had like a spoken word poem, and we needed a location to film it, and she knew John Ruby, and so she asked John if we could use the place, which makes my job easier. I don't have to pay for it. He lets us use it. He actually participated in the video too because we need a couple of people, and then conversation happened between me and John. He invited me to come perform some of my music at the show, and then I seen him running around like a madman. Right. And I'm trying to think, like, I don't think I ever really talked to him whatsoever before that. It's so strange how that works. So, we had that one conversation on that day that I had the video shoot at his church. And then he invited me to the church to perform. And we never like talked on the phone. We never did anything like that. But then I'm watching this guy, and it's because I seen in him that service. I'm like, look at the platform he's providing for people, and look at what it's doing for them, right? These people are letting shame go, they're letting guilt go, they're healing, they're restoring, they're standing in front of people and telling this story that they've carried with them for a long time. And after the story's done, people are congratulating them. So something that I would have been shamed for or guilty about or wanted to hide from people because they were worried about what other people think, well, now there's a platform that you actually realize that people don't care about that stuff. Maybe don't care is the wrong word, but they don't look at it the same way you look at it. They actually care about you, and they don't judge you or define you by those experiences that you went through. And I seen the healing that was taking place just from that one night that I was there. But then I see John trying to MC, and he's running around trying to make his camera work, and the camera's turning off because he doesn't have professional gear. He's not a camera guy, right?
No.
And he's just, it's stressful for him. And I was like, all right, I want to help him out.
Wow.
It's just, I see what he's doing for other people. Now I want to do that for him. And then, helping John out led me to you, which when you were doing a lot of marketing for people led me to some high paying gigs. And it's so interesting how that works when you don't have the motive of selfishness or what am I going to get from this. God will bless you through that, right?
So and it's very evident because you've been just in watching your journey in your in your business
cycle, whatever.
It's been fascinating because last week you and I had this conversation where you really fully now understood your value,
right,
and your pricing.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you've gone from like, free $50.
Yeah. It was like free, $50, $100, and then somebody jumped on me quick because they were smart. They seen I had the quality. He's like, give me 10 videos because he knew I wasn't going to stay at $100 for a long time. And then it went to $250, $300, $400, $600, $750, $1,500, $2,500. And then $3,500 for just a couple of videos that aren't music videos, because music videos are a lot of work, right? And then like the $6,000, and it's really cool how God brings it all in the perfect timing, because it started happening. You know what? Like, he brought me these things so I'll touch on this because I've realized that I was never taught how to be a man. I was never taught how to like really be masculine per se, right? And I grew up with my mom, so you're going to inherit the feminine side of your mother, right? And even though you think you're a man, and whatever the case is, there's a lot of characteristics that men have inherited that aren't what God has designed a man to be, right? And so I got to this point where so mother of my children, who we've always got a government check for the kids. Like, everybody who has kids gets like this baby bonus or whatever it is, and that's always taking care of the rent for the most part. Well, things happen between me and her. We're not together anymore. And I needed to start looking how to figure out how to get my own place, right? And with that, the drive in me started to change. And I said, you know what? Like, even we're still living together. And so, but I didn't want to take that check. I didn't want that check to go to the rent anymore. And so it's like, okay, I need to be a man. I can't rely on even a government check, or I can't rely on any of that stuff. And it's not like I couldn't make $1,300 to pay for the rent, but it's the fact of just changing perspective, not willing to take any handouts from anybody, right? And saying, I'm going to take care of my family, and I'm going to do whatever is necessary. And then, so as soon as my heart changed towards that, then God opened up the doors, and he brought me these guys called Video Warriors. Shout out to the Video Warriors. They are people that are creative, and it's funny because I think in the creative world, a big part of it, even when you're super talented, is you're missing the business side of things, right?
Yeah.
Even if you know it's worth a lot of money, or you see other people charging X amount of dollars for stuff that's not even as good as your stuff, but you have no idea about that world.
Yeah.
But you have, I don't want to say, maybe it is a bit of an ego or something that says, well, I should be getting paid as much as them. But you have no idea how or why they're getting paid that much, right? And so God starts opening up the doors. I find these guys, I spent $25 on their book. I read some of it, but it was because my heart had changed. And so I'm digesting all of their YouTube videos, and it changed my whole perspective, and I understand it now, right? Which opens up, and instantly that opened up the doors. Like as soon as I understood that, well, God lined up the next thing and brought me a client that could pay for what, and I even felt like I undercharged, and I charged more than I usually did.
Yeah.
Right. And then I look at him like, man, I was charging pennies. And then it comes to the point where it's like, how could I ever survive how I was charging before? It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? But you have to be around the right people. You have to be able to be confident in your prices, understand why you're charging those prices. And again, it's the value. It's like, your company, man, if you make, there's an example that they had on the Video War channel. They said this guy he sells solar panels, and he makes about $5,000 to $8,000 in profit every sale. Like profit, not that's how much the solar panels cost, but that's how much profit he makes.
No.
Okay, well, so what does that mean that how much is this video going to be worth then, right? Because it's not about my hourly wage. I've spent a lot of time studying all this stuff over the 10 years. There's another, just to sidetrack a little bit, but there's like this meme that I remember seeing, me and my graphic designer friend, Justin. It says, there's one person at the desk and the other person on the other side of the desk, and he's giving them like a piece of paper with a design on it. And the person says, why does it cost so much for something that took you 10 minutes to do? Well, it took me 10 years to be able to do this in 10 minutes with that kind of quality, right? Yeah. So it's not about an hourly wage, especially when you're running your own business. And so it's like, okay, so you make 5,000 profit every sale. Well, and it's also gonna, like what I charge, it's not like I just charge this and do less work or whatever the case is. I just do the same work for everybody. Because when you pay a certain amount, like I'm also able to give you more of my time, give you more of my headspace, and not take any gigs for it. If you pay me $5 to 10 grand, right, which is going to reflect on your business, that video is going to make you 10 sales. Well, that video is worth 50,000 technically. Like it's not worth the 50,000, but that's the value that's involved in it, right? It's okay, so I charge you 5-10 grand, and then you make $50,000 because of this video, and that's not hard to track either. No. Right? So, the whole mindset changes, and then it's so crazy because it's like the world isn't going to change for you if you're not going to change yourself first, right? So I changed my mind state. I changed where my heart was. I didn't want to be comfortable with this government check, and then the bills are paid and I only have to make X amount of dollars, even though food's really expensive and all that stuff. I'm like, no, this can't be the way I want to live, And then so boom, God just starts opening up all the doors that I needed to get to the place where I can charge $5,000-$10,000 comfortably, and understanding how and why, and it's like not even a question anymore,
So good. Yeah. What you just described is the area where most people are stuck. Right. I just had a sales call with a lady who has 3 degrees, like brilliant what she does, journalism, psychology, and I think the other one's political something, and she's brilliant what she's doing. Right. And I was looking at her product, and she's selling it for $97.
What was she selling?
It's a training program.
Okay,
it's high level. Right. What she does is brilliant. She's incredible. Yeah. The result and the outcome that she provides.
Right. And the fruits have been there. Like people have.
Yes. But the problem was that she didn't understand the value of the work that she does. Right. But also she was marketing to the wrong people.
Well, she's doing it for $97. These Video Warrior guys, they have a book for $25, but their course is $2,000.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is that people often have, price or money being like the barrier. Right. They're like, oh, I can't price. Now, who would pay for that? Right. Who would pay for that? Well, it's not about who would pay for that. It's really about price is just context. So if I'm going to go buy a Tesla, right? I'm going to pay whatever. Price is not the point. You don't go to Tesla, try to negotiate. First of all, they don't negotiate on price.
Yeah.
But you're going there because you're getting this incredible vehicle.
Right.
And whatever the stated price is, what it is, if you value it, then you will pay for it.
Right.
And often that's where people really make the mistake is that, first of all, they don't value the work that they do.
Right.
And then secondly, they're trying to sell their product to a group of people, to the wrong people who don't value what they have.
Right.
So,
but again, that happens because you end up in the wrong circle. And you're in the wrong circle because you're not charging the right prices. So that's being willing to make the sacrifice, say, I'm not going to sell anything less than this. But then you got to put in the work. You got to network.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You got to be grateful to God for everything so then he can open up the right doors for you. But you just got to say, I got to break away from this. And I got to be willing to suffer because I made the mistakes in the first place by either not learning enough or by staying stuck in the same mindset and around the same people. That's nobody's fault but your own, right? So be willing to suffer for the mistakes you made for the greater good at the end of the day, because you suffer for that bit. Maybe you don't have clients for a little bit, or even still, you can still maintain those relationships and those businesses that you already have with lower paying clients, but then you have already made a decision that that's going to stop. Right. And so, you still take the videos for $500 for the time being,
of course,
until you land that $5,000 client. And then it's like all month, okay, I can't take anybody else's videos. I'm focused on this person's work and I don't need to take any other videos. Right. But you got to be willing to suffer and make the changes that you need to make, because you deserve what's happening to you right now, because that's you and your choices. Right.
And that's the point, is that we are the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so often what we say is this, and I see this often, people say this to me, they want a certain outcome, but then they've designed their life to not even match the outcome they're looking for. I'm like, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So what you've done is you came to this realization and said, okay, you know what? I want to live life differently. I don't want to be dependent. And in order to do that, I got to put myself in a situation, which is scary. It's an unknown place, because now all of a sudden, all your insecurities and issues are going to come up, which is like, what if I don't get a client? Because security is something that security, our brain loves it. We want to be comfortable. But to grow, you got to push yourself into environments that you've never been. So what you're doing, and that's what I've seen in you, is last year, I've seen such incredible growth in you. Because you're like a sponge, first of all, but also you're not satisfied just with status quo in any area of your life. That's one thing about you, is that you keep pushing every time you have, I remember early on when we were going to do some LinkedIn stuff for you, you weren't there. You're like, no, I'll just...
Well, LinkedIn is just different.
No, but the point
even today, I'm like, man, I feel like doing something. The other day, I just edited my bio again, so maybe it's coming back into me.
But the point is that it's revelation, though. Is that when you're ready, then the world opens up to you. And I think for you, what's happened is that you came into an awareness going, oh, I could charge this much, and there's people who really truly value this work. Oh, cool. But you have to make changes in your day-to-day life. You to actually specifically put yourself on the ledge in some sense, and saying, you know what? I'm not going to live this way. And I always say to people, faith will cost you. It'll just cost you, and it'll usually cost you the life that you have currently, because you're familiar with it. And so you can't hold on to this life and enter into that. I'm in that same phase, where I brought in, team members, I'm paying people and stuff like that. And it's a whole different set of challenges for me. And I'm confronted with it, because part of me is like, hey, I love the solopreneur lifestyle that I was living. And you want to go back there naturally, because part of you is like, do I have what it takes? That's the question that all of us ask. But
so I mean, I think most of the time, like you know that you have what it takes, but you're just scared of the unknown. Maybe sometimes, right? Like you don't know. And again, it's that security, and I have bills to pay, I have kids to feed, and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to make a mistake. And that was one of the biggest things for me, I think. Like my whole idea surrounding my relationship with my children's mother was really limiting to myself, right? And it affects all areas of your life. So there could be something in your life that is holding you back without even you realizing that belief system that you have, or the ideas that you have surrounding a problem that you have and the solution that you think might be there, or if only this was like this, then things would change. Well, I come to a point where, I've realized I just got to let go of everything. And one thing that I've learned from somebody that I've been following is don't make a decision if you don't know. Like don't even dwell on it. Just don't do anything if you don't know what to do right now. You know what I mean? And just chill and then, but let things go. Don't force anything, right?
Yeah.
And then, but you start to get in that mindset. And like you said, when you are at that time, you're ready, things will start to open up around you. It'll just come. It'll just happen. And you say, oh, like that's all I had to do was just let go. And then it all comes. Like you want something so bad, or you want this, you want that. And then as soon as you stop worrying about it and you just kind of live, it all brings itself around.
Surrender, man.
Yeah.
And that's the challenging thing for all of us at the end of the day, is to surrender, because we want to get to whatever destination. We want it badly.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, if you want something really, really badly, often what happens is you strive and you get in the way.
Right.
And so part of my challenge is I like golf and stuff like that. And one of the things they teach in golf, which is really important, is that you have to allow the swing to happen. So most people, the reason they suck at golf is they're in the way.
Right.
They try to force it.
Yeah.
But to be still.
Yeah, try to hit that ball as hard as you can because you want it to go as far as
you can.
Yeah.
But this is the counterintuitive thing about golf, is that the harder you try to hit the ball,
the more out of control it's
the more out of control,
right?
and also you won't get the same amount of distance. You just won't get it.
Wow.
So part of the challenge of football is, and this is the challenge of it, is that in order to hit a perfect golf shot, you have to be still.
You said football, you meant golf though.
Golf, sorry. Yeah, golf.
You have to be still.
You have to be still. And we often think stillness is being like not doing anything.
Right.
That's not what stillness is.
Right.
Stillness is allowing, so that golf club, the way it's designed, when it goes through the correct path, it automatically, naturally, once gravity takes a hold of it, wants to, but we get in the way of it. We force it. We try to do this, and we injure ourselves. And I think that's a metaphor for life for most of us. When God gave me this word in October, be still and know that I'm God.
Right.
I was just like, I don't like this word. I don't like be still. Yeah. But I didn't know in October that COVID was going to hit. I had no idea that the world was going to stop and everything be flipped. And I didn't also know that during a time when everything was going haywire and people were losing their business and stuff like that, and that my business would start to grow and I would have great clarity and direction.
Right.
But that word, be still, set me up, because what happened was I stopped getting in the way. I stopped adding stuff. I stopped, as soon as when things didn't, my bank account didn't have a certain amount, I didn't go around chasing. I just said, you know what, be still and know that I am God.
Yeah.
And in the stillness, funny enough, is where you are strongest.
Right.
And so you're one of those guys that really have taught me that, because I've watched you. One of the things that you're brilliant at is you don't strive, you don't chase, you're not trying to be anything.
Right.
And I think that's so powerful. And I've learned so much from you just hanging out with you. You're one of the smartest dudes I know.
Well,
man,
glory to God, man.
You're lucky you just sold the drugs and you didn't consume them.
Well, not the ones that I mean, not all of them, let's say,
You're lucky you didn't consume
some of them, but not certain ones, that's for sure.
No, man, this has been like really just an amazing conversation. We just literally, like, we've been talking about doing this, and it happened that the guest wasn't able to be here. Right. So,
well, they thought it was an online podcast. Yeah. So like when it came time, they're like, "Oh
yeah, that was my fault. I'll own that. Okay, I'll own that. That was my mistake." Right. But the point is, I think we were supposed to have this conversation, and we've only even like hit maybe 10% of what we're capable of.
Oh, there's so much that I could talk about too, right? Like, it's just, again, there'd be a time for, like, we didn't plan any of this. We didn't know what we're going to talk about. No. It was just kind of like, it's funny how the conversation goes, like, an hour goes, let me switch the camera. Like an hour goes by, hour and 23 minutes now. And,
wow.
line after line and conversation after conversation. You don't think about it, but it's so interesting how that happens. I'm just like, I've been thinking about it while we're sitting here, like how we're able just to have a conversation for this long, and it just happens, right?
It just happens.
Yeah,
it just it flows because what I love about this conversation is that you're one of those people that just, you're an open book.
Yeah.
And so what people see is what they get.
Right.
You're not trying to play games. You're not trying to be something.
I'm trying to show, like, I don't have anything to prove to people, right? Or I'm not worried if you know, it's like, it's an image. And so I think a lot of times it's an image that you have of yourself in your mind, right? Like, so you develop this idea of who you think you are. And most people don't think it. They feel like they know, oh, this is who I am. You ever hear that? Well, that's just who I am, right? That's just who I am. But it's probably not.
No.
It probably really is not. And so when you have that idea of yourself, you try to portray that to other people all the time. And I think, again, to go back to starting the conversation when we're talking about how I'd be, you know, in a dark place with these musicians being the light, I think what I was providing them was a way for them to be themselves, like to find their actual true self.
Wow.
Because I was being myself, and I, like, it wasn't like two people's images trying to, and I could see through it too. So it's very obvious to me when somebody has an idea of who they think they are, and it's not really who they are. Like if they think they're this rapper or this, you know, they're very tough, or, you know, a drug dealer, I can see beyond that image, and I can see the person. Right. I see their characteristics. I see if they're actually like a nice person, whatever the case is. Right.
Yeah.
And they feel like they can be themselves with me because I'm being myself, and there's no image I'm trying to maintain. Right. So like, even when some stuff happened to me throughout the years that would have never happened to me before, I wasn't afraid to share it with certain people because I didn't care what they thought of me, because it doesn't define who I am. Right.
Yeah.
And even to this day, so in that lifestyle, it would have been detrimental for your image, or per se my image from back in the day, the image that I was trying to maintain. If that were to happen to me then, my whole life would have crumbled. I wouldn't have known what to do with myself because it would have destroyed the image and the person who I thought I was.
Wow.
Right. And so when you don't have this idea or this image of, okay, so this is who I am, you know, I'm a drug dealer, I live the lifestyle that these rappers rap about, I'm never soft, I don't love any women, I don't let them get my heart. And then when something happens that's out of the norm, that doesn't follow that, you don't know who you are anymore.
Wow.
Or your whole image just shatters, and you get in this weird place that is not a good place to be in. And that's when you become real angry. You start to have more resentment. You treat people like crap, whatever the case is, right? So it's a matter of just not having an image or an idea of who you think you are, and just be.
That's
right?
it. Be.
Yeah.
Oh man. And that is probably, I think, what you carry.
Yeah.
Be. And in a world right now where everybody is trying to be something,
Right.
just being you is the most powerful thing I think you can do. And I think
but being careful to say who you are, right? Being you, what does that really mean? So just let go of all these ideas, because who you are, like they used to say, product of my environment, right? Or, you know, who your parents raised you to be, and then the experiences you had in life have formed you and pushed you into this place to survive.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
You got to let all that go and just become a kid again, right? And having kids helps you to see that, because you see these kids, how quick they're able to forgive and love. You know what I mean? Like if I get upset at my children, within 5 minutes, they could be hugging me and loving me and talking about their toys like it never ever happened, right? So it's finding that forgiveness for your parents, first of all, because your parents were responsible for how you were raised, right? Like I see some people's kids, like, or they're like my age now, or whatever the case may be, but you can see that their parents spent time with them, and that their parents really developed who they are, and they're a reflection of their parents a lot of times. Like they'll be working in their parents' business or whatever the case may be. And then, you know, you see the people that have rebelled from their parents because their parents weren't perfect, and nobody's perfect, right? So you got to go back to the root of everything, and that starts with your parents, and forgive your parents. And then, you know, from there you can start to shed away all the things, because once you forgive other people, then God can forgive you, right?
Straight up.
And so then you can start living out of that place of peace and shed away the ideas that you've built up about who you are, and then God can open doors. You can become a cameraman, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I never picked up a camera my whole life, ever. And now I'm feeding my family with it, right? And I've been told that I'm such a good camera person, and I outshine people that have been doing it for 10 plus years, right? And it's because I decided to let go of that image that I had of this drug dealer, of this egotistical, I'm the man kind of thing. And I let all that go, and then everything else, God was able to rework me, right? They say empty yourself so God can fill you back up, right?
And it's so true. And so much of the false image that we carry, again, why do we carry those images?
Right.
Because they're primarily in the rapper guy that you just described perfectly.
Yeah.
The reason he's carrying that image is because he thinks that's going to, or she, protect them.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
about, and I think what you're talking about is, and there's a term for this. It's in we see this in our culture. It's the word actor. You know, in biblically, Jesus, he would call the Pharisees a bunch of, you know, the hypocrites. I can't say that word. What is
Hypocrites.
that? Hypocrites. It's such a weird
Hippo, like hippo.
Hypocrites. That's
Hippo.
it. Hypocrites.
Yeah.
But the point is that that word means actors.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like, they are acting, and often in our culture, was our politicians, and we see
Right.
this now, they're all playing a role.
Big time.
Everybody's playing a role. You know, on social media, everybody's playing a role.
Yeah.
Now you got the filters and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So in order to be you,
Yeah.
the challenge is that who you are, again, yes, there's layers of stuff that's happened to us.
Big time.
So the experiences that our history informs it, our parents, our psyche, there's a
Yeah.
whole set of things that are happening.
School, whatever. Yeah.
But I think what happened to you is when you had this encounter,
Yeah.
this revelation, all of a sudden you saw these false images,
Right.
and these false ideas of
Yeah.
yourself. And as you start to shed those,
Yeah.
you start to see that, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, what it was really was when I got in that car accident, and I started believing in God. So I believed in it changed my belief system.
Wow.
Right. So it was the belief system. Yeah, that's cool. Just
It died?
that's it.
We're
1
done.
hour, 30 minutes. Cool.
That was good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just in case it didn't cut out, this is
Peace.
we're out of here. All
We're
right.
out of here.
Peace.
We've been ended.
Joe's probably got meetings. He's missing the phones ringing.
I am. I got 2 calls right now.
Boom.